Hi everyone, I am so excited to see you. It is not a coincidence that you and I are sharing this moment right now. Do you know I've been working as a medium for over 25 years, and my eyes are so wide open right now and focused on this deep inner need of an awakening. Like life is consciously connecting to all that is. So I've decided to create the Lighter Side Network, where each show and each host reminds us how the everyday meets the extraordinary. Be it in the realm of mindfulness and healthy living, having an empowered and authentic life with humor, trusting your intuition and communicating with beyond, energy healing and releasing unconscious obstacles, astrology, living in your joy and truth, and so much more. Join us as we share our knowledge and experiences with you. We're going to have so much fun.
Hi everybody, my name is Laura Boone.
Hi, my name is Ursula Lentini.
Hey everyone, I'm Darshana Patel.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Karin.
Join me on my show.
Are you ready?
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
The Lighter Side Network, where the everyday meets the extraordinary. That's us. Hi Lumineers, welcome to the Lighter Side Show. I'm your host, Jamie Butler, the Everyday Medium, and I have with us today, back in studio, Marco Pardi. Before you ask why, I was going to tell you how great he was, but we were laughing about things before and I fell flat. Before you ask what the topic is, I would like Marco to tell you what the topic is.
What? I'm here again? Rats.
Marco, I thought you were in Sheboygan. Do you know, please share with our viewers the note you have on your computer.
On my computer. Well, I spend so much time on my computer that next to my monitor I have a note to remind myself. The note says, "Do not reincarnate."
It's like the permanent "do not resuscitate" sign. Do you carry a tag or a bracelet to let people know not to?
On the inside of my eyelids.
It is? Wow, it's fascinating how you do these things. I love it. We're all giggles here, but what we're really talking about is life after near-death experiences. And it might not be as joyful and silly as we're presenting it, because there are some big changes that happen to people after these experiences. Now, before we get into this, I do have some housekeeping notes. If you are interested, Lumineers, in the classes or lectures or workshops that I have, online or in person, please head on over to jamiebutlermedium.com. This is a good community to be a part of. Well, because Marco Pardi is here. We also have in studio today Jessie behind the camera and Colleen giggling in the corner. She's still dreaming about Sheboygan. We'll get her back. So, Marco, you studied anthropology. You're a thanatologist, which means that you have studied death and dying through all kinds of cultures. All cultures? Can we be that definitive? There's many.
No, there's far too many cultures to say that, but many cultures.
And you've been studying near-death experiences since the early 70s.
Early 1970s, right.
You had your own radio show. You have worked with others such as Kubler-Ross and Raymond Moody when all of this was coming about. The language of death and dying within our culture was not affixed until you actually created... humble. But you were a big part of creating the curriculum and creating the language around death and dying for colleges, right?
Oh,
Classes,
okay.
they're still taught today.
Mm-hmm.
That's phenomenal. Like, you're really helping our culture have this language, which is helping some of our viewers who have had near-death experiences, and you know who you are. And in our previous episode, we mentioned, Marco says it Ians, I say Ians, IAND, Society, S. Groups, I wanted to say, you were the head of the Southern Alliance, weren't you?
No. I was the representative for Georgia, and we did have some neighboring states that joined in. Yeah, I don't know that it was formally an alliance, but
Maybe I'm just speaking
kind
Star
of
Wars language.
a regional thing, kind of.
It was a regional thing. It was a big southern region.
Yeah.
Groups got together and talked about near-death experiences. You provided a safe place for them. And this still exists today. So listeners, if you've had an NDE and you want to speak to somebody about it, you can get online, look for these groups and communities around you, or just get a hold of Margot Pardi. Oh. Edit that one out, Jamie. I'm going to get casual now. Because I'd like to hear some of what you've experienced about what happens after near-death experiences with people. Tell me it's superhuman powers.
Superhuman powers.
Yeah, when people have NDEs, they come
Oh.
back with superhuman powers.
Oh, able to turn your mother-in-law into a human?
Well, I mean, way to keep it together.
That would be
Yes,
superhuman.
that's what I was thinking. Have you heard of the new TV show, The OA?
Yes, but I don't. What is that, on Netflix or something?
You're right. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
I don't get Netflix.
I'm just 3 episodes into it. I thought it would be interesting, but it's based on near-death experience or a man trying to study it, and in a very bizarre way. So if that's up your alley, guys, maybe check out that series. I'm still teetering on what it's like. Jesse's already checked out. He's like, I've watched it. It's a little creepy. Colleen has checked out of it already. I'm trying. But you don't force people to die to study near-death experience.
No.
That's what... Sorry, did I give anything away? Spoiler alert! The OA, the guy forces them to die. No, sorry. Da-da-da-da-da.
Okay, yeah.
Let's sit in silence for a little bit. What are some... They're not called side effects.
Well, after effects of NDEs, and just to put it in context, what you were saying earlier, yes, there was a period when I did facilitate group meetings for people here in this region who had had near-death experiences or some component, some part of what's commonly thought of as the near-death experience. And as it turned out, there were also people over time who joined into the group who had transcendental experiences. In other words, they were not in medical crisis, but they had a kind of a situational mini enlightenment of sorts. We've all had these. You sit in traffic and you find yourself goofing on the hubcap of the car next to you, and time doesn't stretch, time doesn't contract, time becomes irrelevant. You have no sense of the measurement of time, and you're just kind of goofing on this, and all of a sudden everything seems to be interconnected and fall in place. Now, when people have experiences like that, because of the popularity, because of the visibility of the near-death experience and all of the talk about it and so on, sometimes people think, oh, well, was I near death when this happened to me? I was at the park one day and I lost half an hour. Was I near death? No, you were abducted by aliens.
I thought about the same thing. Poor thing.
So there were times when, frankly, there were some disappointed people that I met when I helped them understand you had a really great experience. I mean, that's what people look for when they study yoga and meditation and all this kind of thing. And it just happened to you, which is the way it normally happens. So enjoy it, and you just consider yourself fortunate. But it was a near-death experience in the sense of a medical crisis, and you leaving your corporal body. No. So, long story short, yes, there was a period when I facilitated these groups.
Before we get into the list of the after effects, is this for any kind of near-death experience? Because there are variations, are there not? It's not just a classic, your body is injured, physically injured, and the consciousness or soul is not maintained in it. Like, you have a moment, you have a out-of-body experience, but with, oh God, I'm floundering. I want to explain that when we think near death, I immediately go, okay, your physical body has to be injured or dying or already completely dead. Like, it cannot hold your soul. Your soul is a spirit. You have an experience, and that spirit comes back into your body as a soul. Boom. But I've heard you talk about different variations of near-death experiences. So are these after effects going to apply to those as well? Or just that traditional kind that I just spoke about?
Well, I think this goes back to what I was speaking of a moment ago in transcendental experiences. Now, some of the same issues arise subsequent to transcendental experiences as arise with NDEs. Yes, that's true. When people say, gee, what happened to me? Am I going crazy? But my focus, I think, in answer to your question, is specifically on what is considered the classic NDE. Keeping in mind, though, as I said, that yes, some things can also be applied to people who have a difficulty with a transcendental experience, although frankly there aren't that many who say, gee, I had a moment of enlightenment and it sure bothers the hell out of me.
Mine bothered the hell out of me.
Okay, how so?
Well, it did. I was channeling for a woman at my home office like 20 years ago. And in that channeling, I left my body and I saw spirits, entities that were like, come here, I want to show you something. And they just kind of walked me away from my body. I remember the room just kind of changed. I was in a completely different place. I had full-on language experiences. I had no concept of, I got 5 minutes left, or just no worry about any of that stuff. I had feelings that I hadn't felt on earth. I wanted to stay. I could remember that I had a boyfriend and I had a dog. Who knows who I loved more? And I was willing to give all of them up, my family, my dog, everything, if you just let me stay. I knew I would be okay without them. I knew they'd be okay without me. It was totally fine. I didn't want to go. And I remember being forced back into my body. Hated it. I thought about being one of those cats. You know, cats can wig out and spread their legs and you can't get them in the cat carrier. And I was like, I'm just going to freak out. They can't get me back in that body. And shoved me back in. I woke up screaming and crying. I wanted to disrobe. I wanted to throw away everything that I had. I remember looking at the woman and going, we don't need all this stuff. Like, I've got to get rid of it. I started packing. I started putting things away. Like, I wanted nothing. It was awful. My life, the way that I saw it, was not the way I had left it.
That's quite an experience.
It sat with me for a really long time, but it's unfortunate every time I share a bit about it, it waters it down because there's not the right words for it. You know, there's not a...
Sure.
You know.
That's exactly right. That's what most people say. They say, gee, I don't know how to describe this, but then they go ahead and try.
They try, and I feel like it paints it a different color, and people go, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I'm like, I don't know if you do. I think I would have to get you into that place. But it's not something I was asking for, and I definitely wasn't in any danger, and my body wasn't sick or harmed. I was channeling, trance-channeling. And normally in my case, when I trance-channel, I kind of doze off or sleep. It feels really good. But this was a full-on different place. And I have begged for a long time to go back. I've asked. I've begged. I've cried to get back. And though I've never had that experience again. One spirit told me I couldn't handle it. What? It's the truth, though. I couldn't handle it.
I wouldn't say, from what you've described, I wouldn't say that you were not in any danger. My impression is that you were in fact in danger. And I mean this in the best of all possible ways, Jamie. You are not as tightly connected to the sense of materialism and incarnate existence as the average person is. So for you, knowing you as the many years that I have now, it doesn't at all surprise me that you would have what was a kind of a threshold experience that very nearly brought you that one step further that you might have taken. I'm not surprised at that at all. And so, from my perspective, I would say you were in danger in the sense that you might well have not come back.
Marco, honestly, if I could have made that decision, I would not have come back.
You make my case.
It sounds odd to say out loud, but true.
Mm-hmm.
So, after effects.
Right. All right, so first, unpleasant after effects. No fear of death, more tolerant, loving, compassionate, no longer materialistic, status-oriented, enhanced appreciation of life, spiritual values change, sense of mission or purpose in life, NDE is vivid in mind, heightened concerns for the environment, ecological issues, electrical sensitivity and inability to wear a wristwatch, develop psychic tendencies, premonitions, enhanced intuitive perception, develop a healing ability or being healed, and huge psychological boost. Okay.
Is there a pill for that?
Sorry?
Is there a pill for that? In reading this, I have this weird inner desire to make that a college class that everybody has to take. They have to have an NDE experience so that they can have these side effects.
Well,
They're not side effects, they're after effects.
Yeah, after effects.
After effects.
The difficulty here is that, as I have pointed out in classes on death and dying, and I've pointed out to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, her work that she laid out with what became the stages of dying and so forth was completely patient-centric. That is, it focused on the patient to the exclusion of the significant others in the environment. Okay? And in my experience, working with families, working with dying patients and so forth, as I did so many years ago, the significant others often play a vastly more difficult role in this entire process than the patient themselves. And the same is true here, is that Penny has not, in my view, has not entirely developed a context for these after effects. And it's as if she's talking to the experiencer and forgetting that this experiencer is embedded in a social matrix.
Yeah, the environment and the people around them, what you're saying is really influences. Yeah.
And so, beginning, for example, with the unpleasant after effects, one of the first unpleasant after effects, and I think, in my experience anyway, it's universal. Well, I should say, with so few exceptions that it hardly can be quantified. But the unpleasant after effects begin with a sense of self-doubt. a sense of, oh, I can't possibly have experienced that, or I must be crazy, or I can't tell anybody about this, or this goes against everything I've been raised to believe. And so before the person even makes the first statement to anyone else about what they have experienced, they're chewing themselves apart, trying to figure out, did this really happen? Is there something wrong with me? Do I dare tell anybody? And if so, who do I tell? Who can I confide in? Who will set me straight on this? They're looking outside themselves for who will set me straight. And that can be a very rough process for people.
I was going to say, I have a weird link in my head all of a sudden when you're talking about, how it's hard to find somebody to really talk to about these experiences. And now that NDE is becoming more of a accepted topic, and we're finding the validity in it. Maybe we don't understand all the details, but we're getting stories that prove to be what we would call true, right? Through NDE analysis. My weird link in my head was people who've experienced, it has nothing to do with NDEs, but multidimensional beings, what some call aliens. Like, some people have this kind of experience. It's like, who do you talk to about that? Like, it just dawned on me how difficult it is in our society to communicate intense experiences. We tend to be more hush up, manage it yourself, and go about your way. Everything's fine. And I just thought I would point that out. It just gave me a weird little moment in my head.
Well, you're quite right. It's quite accurate to draw in corollary events such as you mentioned, in the respect that when we go back, for example, to something as simple as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what we find is that fundamental to this hierarchy of needs is personal security. And there's nothing more secure than your own sense of yourself as being mentally okay.
I agree.
And so when this kind of event happens, all of a sudden, little categories that we've taken for granted, some of us have taken for granted for years, little compartments that we've put experience and concepts and thoughts in, when the boundaries among those compartments dissolve, we find ourselves thinking, oh, what's going on? Well, so looking at this concept of compartmentalizing, people talk about, well, even the terms we've been using so far, after effects, afterlife, that kind of stuff. When you have these experiences, one of the fundamental breakthroughs that occurs for people is the sudden realization that the term after is irrelevant. The term after is a false construct. You're not physical now and spiritual later after your body stops thumping. You see what I'm saying?
Oh no, I'm go, Marco, go.
So this, I'm so astounded at people who can 6 days out of the week fancy themselves as rational, logical, materialist-oriented people who value the scientific method and all of this kind of stuff, and yet on the seventh day they find themselves in some kind of an event in which they're having some kind of non-physical spiritual experience, whatever their faith may be.
But just one day a week.
But just one day a week. And that's for church, and the rest is for is for making money or whatever it happens to be. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I see what you're saying. But these things go together, people.
And so when those boundaries melt or disappear, there goes your sense of security, the sense of comfort. Where does everything fit? Where do I fit in this? Who am I? What am I? Starts to become questionable. So that is a serious personal crisis for some people, where they throw up their hands and say, "Well, I don't know what to believe." Well, maybe belief is the problem. Okay, so that obviously then means that if a person is candid or dares to be candid with people who they previously or up to that point have been close to, such as a marital relationship, some other familial relationship, some deep friendship, and so on. If they share their new perspective with these other people, and the other people not having had an experience such as they've had,
Right.
the other people say, "Well, that must have been the anesthesia. That must have been a dream," or "You must be going crazy."
It was your imagination.
Yeah,
This isn't real.
that invalidation or attempt at invalidation coming from other people does what? It drives the person further into themselves.
Yeah, it does.
And that's a very real risk, and unfortunately a very real after effect.
And a very unpleasant after effect.
This sense of alienation and isolation. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I tell my students sometimes, Marco, that becoming whatever your term is, enlightened, spiritual, all-knowing, whatever you're going for, is a very lonely path.
Mm-hmm.
Because communicating it falls flat. It's not as simple as communicating about the shape and design of the table, where somebody can touch it and experience it in a very similar way, and you high five because you've got it. This is elusive. It's personal experience. Some people don't recognize how lonely it can be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, the next
I like the next one.
the next after effect that she stipulates is no fear of death. All right, that looks great on paper, but what I, as a thanatologist, see when I see that on the paper is, no, we're not talking about no fear of death. What we're talking about is no fear of being dead. Okay, being dead and getting dead are two different things.
Oh, they're two different things.
Two different things.
Thank you for that.
So I have no fear of being dead, but don't put me down a wood chipper. Okay?
Oh my, where's your head going? Is that like just grab out of the air wood chipper? My God, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking of being in front of a train, but
Well,
just
that's
because
a
we have a
bit-
train
that's-
coming.
It's a bit sudden, but a
Right?
slow-moving wood chipper. That would be
I'm
great.
seeing a new episode here. We can talk about the many ways to die. Which one are you afraid of? Check me out for both of them, wood chipper and train.
So my point in making that distinction, again, is simply to make the observation that whenever we encounter books, and this book is valuable. Please don't misunderstand me. The book is extremely valuable. But whenever we encounter this kind of information, this kind of perspective, we need to draw back and say, wait a minute, there's more to it than just what's printed on the page. The no fear of death, that people are too quick and too easy to say something like that. What they really mean is no fear of being dead, not no fear of getting dead.
I would agree with that, Marco. As honestly, make me dead right now, I'm totally fine, but tell me how it's going to happen, and I don't think I'd be so chill. A little honesty.
Now, some of these that I listed off, and I understand completely that people won't have remembered everything that I went through on this long list, but several of these that I listed off are actually different variations of the same thing. So, no longer materialistic, status-oriented. That kind of goes with heightened concerns for the environment and ecological impact and so on. So you can blend several of these together. Enhanced appreciation of life, spiritual values change. Okay, good. But the important issues that we need to look at in terms of after effects are fundamentally based in the person themselves. You remember in our last discussion, I mentioned that in doing an analysis of an NDE, I divide the person into three parts.
Yes, I do remember that.
The pre-experienced person, the during-experienced person, and the post-experienced person. Mm-hmm. We can do the same here. And we can ask ourselves, in terms of the after effects, the after effects are not simply artifacts of the experience itself. The after effects are artifacts of the entry of the pre-experience person into the during experience phase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's looking at where they were, what their baseline was
Exactly.
before.
Exactly.
Because what if they were already not afraid of death?
Exactly.
Or, sorry, afraid of being dead. Look at that. We just talked about it, and my language just fell back into the old pattern of saying that. Mm-hmm. They might not be afraid of being dead, so then this over here, it's the same. So it's not an after effect.
So there have been people, for example, that I have known who have had experiences related to death. And what I'm referring to here are experiences such as what I call the sympathetic death experience, going with someone else as they die and going pretty far into the experience. And related kinds of experience, out-of-body experience and so on. There have been people who've had these experiences, and when they talk about it, they are asked at times, well, didn't that change you as a person? And I've heard some people say, no, because their pre-experienced person was already
There.
comfortably aligned with that perspective in the first place. And which is another thing that baffles me about people who, for example, claim to be spiritual or religious, and then something like this happens, and they're completely undone. And I'm thinking, what did you expect?
Or it makes you really wonder, where were they to begin with?
Exactly.
And
yeah.
how much of it were they just reiterating with their words and not truly owning or experiencing authentically?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to point out, I really like that sideways glance you gave me. Looked like you were up to something.
You were like the what?
You
Oh,
gave
the sideways look.
Yeah, you gave me a sideways look, which always means that you're about to say something. That look right there.
It was about you know who I'm talking about.
Yes. Inside secrets that we're not going to share. Isn't that terrible? God. Stop pointing it out, Jamie. Keep going.
So when again, in looking at that list of after effects, there are some things that we can't do much with if we're going to take an analytical perspective. For example, electrical sensitivity. This is a popular one. Electrical sensitivity and inability to wear a wristwatch. All right, that's nice. But,
Why does it happen?
well, I'm sure as hell not going to put my expensive wristwatch on your wrist and see if you break it.
I've killed a lot of really nice, expensive watches.
Yeah, well, this one you won't.
Not just
I'm holding it.
Seiko's, baby.
This isn't a Seiko.
I know, it's not. Look, it's keeping it far away
I'm
from
just
me.
keeping it far away from you. All right, the problem with this,
Yeah.
again, from an analytical perspective, and I hope that our audience, I'm trusting in a sense that our audience is composed of people who are interested in this subject, but who want to have the subject fully and completely explored in such a way that they don't find themselves later with questions that weren't answered during the presentation. Okay? So that's why it tends to get a little tedious and professorial and all that kind of stuff.
But we do appreciate that, Marco.
Well, but here it is. When someone says, and I've had this happen, I've met people who have said in this group, I've met people who have said, oh, I can't wear a wristwatch, or I go into Best Buy and it turns out to be a worst buy because everything shuts down or whatever, you know. And all I can say is, that's nice.
They were probably in Sheboygan.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We have nothing against Sheboygan in any state.
You're gonna get hate mail from
We're just
Sheboygan.
teasing. No, we love you, Sheboygan Lumineers. Don't.
Well, the issue is that, you know, it's nice information, and glad to hear about your electrical interference and all that, but I can't do anything with it. The reason I can't do anything with it is I didn't know you before.
And that might have happened before,
Exactly.
but they didn't pay attention to it.
Exactly.
But now that this has happened, now they're looking at it and it's everywhere. And so
Exactly.
they're associating it to that point, that moment in time.
Exactly. So I use the example. I use the example of a person who presents medically with some kind of organic imbalance, and we look at the person, can't figure out what the imbalance is coming from, and then we do a history, and we find out, oh, 20 years ago this person abused alcohol. Aha! There's the reason. There's the reason. You see what I'm saying? It's post attributing cause to a present condition without any demonstration of a linkage between the two. And that's easy to do. So someone says to me, oh, I have electrical issues where I can no longer wear a watch, and I do a little history on them and find out, oh, they had an NDE a year ago or 2 years ago. Aha, that must be it. Well, we don't know that it's it. What we're doing is post-attributing a cause based on some kind of prejudgment that there's a connection between having NDEs and having electrical issues, disturbances. You can't do that. You can't seriously do that, is what I'm saying. That doesn't hold up.
But it's got, if she's putting it on her list, there's got to be enough people coming forward going, now this is really weird because it wasn't doing it before and now I can't make it go away. Like it's constantly breaking.
She put it on her list. If you read the book, which I hope some people do, she put it on her list simply because it is reported. Not because she's saying it's accurate or that it's true. Simply because people reported this as an after effect.
Can we talk about the one that says develop psychic tendencies, premonitions, and enhance intuitive perception?
Okay, you're pretty good at reading at an angle.
It was by memory, Marco.
Right.
No, it wasn't.
So here again, the problem remains the same. If you can't demonstrate that you have a certified pre-existence analysis of this person in which they had no such psychic tendencies, premonitions, enhanced intuitive perception, all you're doing is accepting a subjective judgment. Oh, I seem to be psychic now. Oh, I seem to have more premonitions now. Okay, that's a thoroughly subjective assessment. glad to hear it, kid, but I can't do a thing with it.
Because from my understanding, Colleen's just in the corner giggling. My understanding of psychic tendencies, premonitions, communication to energy and beyond, my relationship with it is that everybody possesses it. This is just the way our instruments are made. So what if it was just sleeping or dormant, or the speaker that they came in with was like this big, and then they upgraded when they had an ND and they came back with a large speaker, or the volume got turned up? It doesn't mean that they all of a sudden got the ability, because my connection to it is that we have that ability from zero all the way through this. But developing a new relationship with it, that might be something that's a bit of an after effect. But for me, I wouldn't say it would make them psychic or make them have premonitions, because it's something that we have.
I see your perspective, and I think there's a lot of merit to it. But again, from a standoff position of analysis, I'd like to be able to do more with it than to just accept the person's claim that there's quantitatively more such ability than there was in the past.
You know what?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you might like the OA.
Well,
This is a silly TV series. But, I mean, that would give you the right to really research who they were prior to after. It'd be interesting if we could achieve this one day.
well, I think someone would take a dim view of inducing NDEs in people.
I have a different outlook.
Yeah.
You know I'm weird about that anyways. We'll have to do this again. You think? Maybe? But no episode about Marco Pardi, the man behind the man? No.
Doesn't exist.
Lumineers will post the link of the author Penny's book, and so that you can check it out if you've had an experience with NDE and you want to understand it more. Maybe you know someone who has. It might give you some language and ways to connect to them, help build a better community. Or check out Ian's or Ian's. Which way do I want to say it? I can go either way. You can find them online as well. And big thanks to Marco Pardi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Honestly, you are such a resource. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jenny.
I like your stories. Maybe we can just do story time. What? I'm not kidding. You've got the best stories.
You bring the marshmallows? Yeah. Okay, we'll sit around the campfire. And
We've got grass on set. We can build a campfire. I'll make that happen. Oh my goodness.
We could green screen the fire.
We could put it behind us. All right, Lumineers, stay tuned at the lighter side. We have more coming. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, it's not woo-woo, it's true. It is. Keep going. Just keep going.